Welcome back to Legal View, everyone. I'm John Berman. Starting tomorrow, adults in Colorado can go to a state-licensed liquor store and legally buy up to 1 ounce of marijuana. Not as medicine. They can do it just for fun. There is concern, though, especially from high school educators, that the new law will make marijuana more tempting for teenagers. Our Ana Cabrera reports.
Colorado schools have a pot problem. How many people around your age do you know who have smoked marijuana?
Almost, I would say like 9 out of 10
Really?
students. Yeah.
Is that prevalent?
Yeah, definitely.
Now that it's legal, everybody's just getting it.
While still illegal for anyone under the age of 21, younger people are finding ways to get their hands on marijuana. And we found they don't shy away from talking about it.
I see people selling it, and I think it's easy for people to get now.
Even for somebody who's underage.
Yeah.
Do you know of anybody who comes to school high or gets high during lunch break, for example?
Oh yeah, this is, yeah, definitely.
Not that common.
Yeah, it's not uncommon at all. There's a bunch of people that come to this school high.
While some teens seem to think using marijuana is okay, schools are trying to send a message that it's not. Pot is now the #1 reason students are kicked out of Colorado public schools. 230 expelled last year because of marijuana, according to the Colorado Department of Education. Pot proving to be a bigger problem than alcohol, disobedience, or weapons violations.
The message we'd like to get out from the School Safety Resource Center is we really need parents to be talking to their children about the risks.
The evidence is very clear that it's addictive.
Adolescent and addiction specialist Dr. Paula Riggs says 1 out of 6 kids who tries marijuana as a teenager will become addicted. She says compared to the 1960s, the marijuana sold today has a higher concentration of THC, a chemical that impacts memory and learning, reaction time, and motor skills. Riggs says a developing brain is most vulnerable.
Daily or near daily use can be associated with 6 to 8 point reduction in their adult IQ. Looks like you don't get that back.
Our Ana Cabrera reporting. A former advisor to White House drug czars under both President Bush and President Clinton sees the new Colorado marijuana law as a threat to teenagers. Paul Chabot joins us now from Los Angeles. Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, John. I appreciate it.
What's your major concern here? Is it just about teenager that we're sending the wrong message to them?
Well, that's a huge part of this, and I really congratulate you on that segment because I think had voters had a chance to see what was going on in Colorado schools at the time they were voting for this law, they might not have voted for it. You know, our concern is that this is really about big marijuana, much as like big tobacco in the 1980s. And the drug legalization movement is starting off with medical marijuana to now marijuana legalization, and their end state is overall drug legalization by desensitizing the American population. But look, if I can send a message, because I've worked for 2 administrations, I'm a father. I like to deliver this message to President Obama as a father. Our president has got to get out in front of this issue. He's been quiet. He's been on the sidelines. He has not addressed this epidemic. While other drugs, alcohol, tobacco are down, marijuana use is skyrocketing amongst our youth. We've got an epidemic amongst us. We need leadership now.
You said this is like big tobacco. You're comparing marijuana sales to big tobacco. I'm not sure I understand what you mean there. The tobacco companies are these huge multi-million-dollar corporations.
Well, absolutely, and there's a lot of people behind the marijuana movement who intend to make a lot of money. There's a former Microsoft executive who's looked at launching a business. You can look at the food products, the pot tarts, the lollipops with marijuana infused. This is about money. This has never been about sick people. This is about generating lots of money. And just like tobacco, some had argued it targeted kids for a population, we now see a lot of the products made with marijuana are quite honestly marketed towards youth. And so this is about money. It's about making money. And we've got to worry now about domestic marijuana cartels in our communities in Colorado, Washington, and sadly maybe other states unless we turn the tide.
But the laws are in place, much like they are for alcohol, to try to keep marijuana out of the hands of teenagers. You know, it's not legal for people under 21, decriminalized for people 18 to 21. They won't go to jail, but they'll still have to pay fines here. So again, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but how is this different than alcohol?
Well, and that's a huge problem, is the marijuana movement has a number of talking points, and one of those is about alcohol. Look, our message is we've got enough problems already with alcohol, with DUI, spouse abuse, domestic violence. You know, why do we need to cross the bridge into another product? Because once we go down this road of legalization, I think it's going to be very hard to turn back. And let me be critical for a moment of the Obama administration on this. The federal government could have gotten involved in Colorado and Washington. They chose not to. They could have sued. However, what they've done is looked at other states. They've sued Texas, they've sued Arizona over immigration, over voting laws, but yet they've turned a blind eye to what's happening in these very catastrophic events with drug legalization in these states.
Well, they haven't turned a blind eye to it, and it hasn't happened yet, so there haven't been catastrophic events. I mean, this law doesn't go into place for another few hours now, so we don't know what an effect it will have. The Attorney General has made it clear that they will not impose the federal laws on marijuana in Colorado and ultimately Washington State when that law goes into effect. But let me just remind you what Colorado voters say, because 58% there, 58%, that's a lot more than a majority. 58% said they wanted to legalize pot. And that's a far cry from what it was in 1995 when just 25% were in favor of legalization here. Do you feel the argument slipping away from you as more and more Americans seem to be saying pot's okay?
Yes, absolutely. It is slipping away. And it's slipping away because, again, of big marijuana. Look, they've got lots of paid lobbyists. They've got billionaires that fund their marijuana legalization initiatives. It's very hard for us to counter their messaging in the media and as well as commercials. Look, a big reason the American population is following this is because they say, let's tax it and regulate it. Well, in Colorado, they're looking at taxing it at around 28%. Who's going to come in behind that? It's going to be the black market, which is going to explode. I write about this in my book, Eternal Battle Against Evil, about the drug cartel influence that we already have in this country, and we're going to see, I think, more of this. Let me mention to you briefly, and you may be aware of this, in California, in my home state, we've seen the marijuana money corrupt local elected officials in Cudahy, Fountain Valley, and other cities by bribes. We're very concerned that this drug money is going to do the same thing in these other states as well.
Paul Chabot, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your perspective on the eve of this major change in Colorado's laws. It's important to keep this in perspective as we go forward. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
We're going to talk more now about the legal implications of this as the new Colorado law goes into effect in about 14 hours. What will happen inside these states? How will law enforcement react to this? Joining me now, Danny Savalos, the CNN legal analyst and defense attorney, and HLN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney, Joey Jackson. Danny, let me start with you here because our guest there, Paul Chabot, just brought up the dichotomy between the federal law and the state laws there. He says the president's got to make some kind of statement about marijuana, but hasn't his administration already made a sort of statement by the Attorney General saying we're not going to impose the federal law there?
Right. That's a nice statement, but again, it creates a constitutional crisis. It's not enough for the Attorney General to say, I'm not going to enforce a well-established federal law. If anything, that's a derogation of his duty. The problem is this. We currently have federal law that outlaws marijuana. Colorado and Washington are literally disregarding federal law. It's nice to know that their constituency, 58% of the voters, want to legalize marijuana, but that is legally irrelevant while there is still a federal law outlawing marijuana. And nowhere is this more apparent than at the airport. You can see the crisis, these two issues meeting head-to-head at the Denver airport, where it's a municipally owned entity. However, it is so federally regulated, it must abide by federal law. So the fact that Eric Holder is saying, well, I'm not going to enforce federal law, well, that's not good enough because it's still illegal. And he really, in a way, does not have the discretion to simply disregard existing federal law. This constitutional crisis has to be resolved first and right away.
Joey, what about some of the other issues, some of the other gray areas that people see here legally, especially including